And we can start with volume, which when I first did my kind of deep dive into research on this type of stuff maybe a year or two ago, a lot of what I found seemed to point to volume as being really important. I know that there are kind of some disagreements, maybe between whether volume or proximity to failure is more important or whatnot, but it seemed like if you held other things the same, if you just increase your volume, or if you have the correct amount of volume or the same amount of volume rather, that you'd have more muscle growth or the same muscle growth. So what are your thoughts first on volume research in general? I know there's a lot there, and there's been kind of fingers being pointed in one direction or another about people being funded by the big volume corporation. And just in general, what you
You
think
know,
about the relationship of volume and strength gains and muscle gains and how that kind of plays into your framework for the minimum effective dose of volume for the same.
yeah, it's like people don't like to view things in context. They also have I think it's human nature to an extent that the need to, oh yeah, this is there's a big conspiracy that it's like people are talking about like Brad Schoenfeld and the infamous criticisms of the studies from the lab where there's like one study he didn't blind the ultrasound. Yes, because he was the ultrasound technician and he didn't have the master's program going on at the time, so he couldn't leave the undergraduate students unsupervised doing the data collection. And sure, it's a limitation, take it in consideration, but then we're looking at the totality of the literature, not the one study. So that's been like a big source of like controversy, but it's the controversy stems mostly from people parroting things that other people have said, which essentially creates this feeling of a conspiracy and bias. When in reality, and Menno said that on the Revive Stronger podcast with Josh Pelland, Sam Buckner, and Holly Baxter, when they were talking about volume, that a lot of the stuff that Brad does has directly gone against his own claims from books that he sells, on books that he sells, or his previous hypotheses. And the idea that there's a conspiracy to show that more volume equals more gains, I don't know. I don't understand the thinking behind that, because from a anyways, I'm now defending people, but I just don't get the thinking there, because if anything, like the conspiracy would have been the opposite, like do less to gain more, and less is more, which we were seeing in the literature back in the day, but that was a whole kind of like I'm ADHDing to the extreme now. All that to say that in the context of the minimum effective training dose, actually in general, training volume, yeah, there does seem to be a dose response between training volume and muscle growth. Now, does that mean that more equals a ton more? No, but more is probably more for in some cases, and for the individuals that care about that. The same way, if you were to instead of making, and I always use this silly analogy, like if you were looking at investments, you could make a few basic investments that are tested for time and have a solid income and just keep investing and have an amazing retirement. Or you could spend much more time looking into investing and taking risks and doing this and making educated bets and potentially have even more money that for some people will make a meaningful difference. For others, they'll be like, bro, I am not going to spend 10, 15 years of my life caring about all this, or, an extra few hours in the gym and less time with my kids or less time with my loved ones to have slightly bigger biceps that may not be visually like noticeable, So if we are geeking out about training volume and gains, and we're trying to get closer to the truth for the sake of getting closer to the truth, that's a different context to us, like meaningful gains and getting jacked and strong. So all that to say, training volume is important for muscle growth. There comes a point where more may not be more, but if your life depends on it and you are seeing that things are not changing, yeah, doing a bit more and going in the 20 to 30 set range for some muscle groups here and there may make some sense. But that's it. Like, as long as you're between 5 to 10 sets, you're going to make the majority of your gains. And for some people, it may be close to all of their gains. So and that's why I said 3 to 6 sets as a minimum effective dose. You're looking at like a solid 80-85% of potential gains, possibly from that number of sets. Maybe 85% is a bit too high. Like let's leave 80 to 85% for 5 to 10 sets, and say a bit less for 3 to 6 sets. So that's training volume in the most complicated and long way